So in the Galaxy movie, I showed you how good IN-SPIRE is at automatically coming up with terms that are related to your documents and arranging documents so that similar documents are near each other. Well, now I'd like to talk about how you can organize those documents either based on selections or keywords and phrases that you run queries on. Now, the place that we store these collections is in the Groups tool. And in fact, even if you've never created any groups, you may have already been exposed to groups using the VOA News 2006 dataset that comes with IN-SPIRE. And you can see this Livinenko folder has groups in it, and the groups all have padlocks because they were created by the system when the dataset was created, so you can't edit those. But let me show you a way that you can make your own groups and what you can do with them. So one way to do that, of course, like we already showed, is to open up the QVP panel, the Quick View panel, and just execute a query. So for example, this database comes from the Internet Movie Database, and it has plot summaries of movies, and I've made it a subset from just 2000 to 2010. And so I want to compare and contrast locations with occupations. So let me go ahead and just type in an occupation here. I'm going to put in rock star. So this is a fast way to do a query. So just from the QVP panel. Okay, so all of these green documents, 110 of them, I know that all of these green documents have the phrase rockstar in them. And now if I wanted to keep this, I can go to the Groups panel, the Groups tool, and I can choose New Group, and then this dialog comes up that lets me name it if I want to. So I can call it Rockstar, and I can pick a new color if I want to, and I hit OK. And so now I have a group made from a selection that is called Rockstar. Now that is a multi-step action there. So I'm going to delete that little dialog box here to confirm. And let me show you a faster way to make a group from a query. So if you go to the main toolbar and open the Query tool, now you can do a query and make a group in one step. Now in this case, so I could type in Rockstar here, but if you look over here in the query history, this includes all the recent queries I've done, even from the Quick View panel. So Rockstar is already in there. But now instead of doing query, I'm going to do group results. So here's that same dialog. And so I can rename it here if I want to, and the W just shows that it's a word query. So now I've made Rockstar as a query. Okay, so let's do another one here, and I'll show you something else that makes this a little faster. So let's say computer hacker group results. So it's going to do the query, and it'll bring up this dialog again. Now, if I'm not too interested in picking exact colors and I don't really care that the names are going to be perfect, I can uncheck this box, and now I won't see this dialog every time I go to make a new one. Okay? So now I can just keep going. FBI agent group results. It'll do the query, and when it's done, it'll just make a group and it'll leave me here. So I've put in lots of occupations. Alright, and after this one we'll call it good. Close the query window. So now you can see over in my Groups tool, I have all of these occupations that I just put in, and you can see it shows how many matched for each of those. Now what I want to do is, I've already made locations. Here are all my locations that I've put in, and you'll notice I have them grouped into a folder. So what I want to do is, under this new button here, I want to make a new folder. Now I'll highlight it, go edit, and I'm going to call this occupations. Now what I want to do is I want to move all of these occupation queries into this occupations folder. So the easiest way is to click on the last one and then shift click, hold down the shift key and click on the first one, and that will highlight everything in between the two places you clicked. And then you can just grab one of them and drag it into the occupations folder. And so now you can see they're all inside the occupations folder. Okay, so now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to clear my selection. Now I have nothing selected and I don't have any groups highlighted. You'll notice when I click on a group, I'm not making a selection, I'm making a highlight. So the documents that match that group, they're going to highlight in the color of the group. So if I highlight a bunch of them, again using the Shift key to select a multiple, and then you can see I can show all of the different places where these match. Now there's something else I can do here too. Down at the bottom of this window it shows me the total number of documents. So I know I have 6,579 total, and the overlap, so the number of documents that have at least 2 of these groups in common, there are 539 of those. Now if I switch this to all groups, then, and that makes sense, there are 0. So there are no documents that have all of these occupations in the same document, and that kind of makes sense. Now if I wanted to make a selection out of these 539 that match at least 2, then I can click this selection button, and those documents that match will turn bright green. And then you'll notice something else. The ones that include a selection now have a green border around them. And it also shows you how many of that group's total are selected. So there were 110 movies that had Rockstar in them. 9 are now selected. So 9 movies with Rockstar also have another occupation in them. And so you can do all kinds of combinations with that. So let me clear this selection out. Now let's combine 2 things. So let's highlight New York. You can see all of the documents that have New York in them. If I make this into a selection, those documents will get a green outline, and now all of my other groups will show how they overlap with New York. So I have 3 magazine editor in New York, 31 president, 65 police officers. So you can kind of go through these numbers. And there's another tool that's really good at doing this, and it's called the correlation tool. But we'll get into that in another movie. Another thing you can do once you have a bunch of groups identified is you can highlight a series of groups, and then you can go to the time tool, and under the view menu you can turn on and off this info panel over here. And if you have groups highlighted over here in the groups window, those will all show up over here in the time slicer window. The other thing you can do in time slicer is you can change the data menu to groups, and instead of a stacked bar, this will give you a split graph showing you all the groups that you have selected and what their frequency is across those time periods. So several interesting ways you can look at your data using groups and the time tool. Now one other thing you can do with groups is in the document viewer. Under the view menu of the document viewer, you can choose groups and evidence ratings, and this will make a table of all the groups that you have selected in the group tool. So if we expand this out a little bit so you can see it. So now you can see which groups each document matches of the set that you have selected in the document viewer. The other thing you can do from the document viewer is if for some reason you find a document that should be in another group, you can go to the edit menu and you can choose add document to group or remove the document from the group. So that's a quick overview of the groups tool and how you might use it to make collections of things that you're interested in.